Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TCG Folk. This week I talked to Abby Gore, the director of youth and young adult engagement at Mount Zion Temple. We talk about what brought her to St. Paul, why working in the youth engagement space is appealing, and how she came to be the student speaker at her recent graduation from Hebrew Union College on this week's Who the Folk podcast. Abby Gore, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Really happy to talk to you. You're the director of youth and young adult engagement at Mount Zion and a recent graduate from the master's program at HUC, Hebrew Union College and Jewish Institute of Religion from the LA campus. We'll talk about that in a sec. But first wanted to start with just sort of the work at Mount Zion. What was it that brought you into Mount Zion and working in sort of the youth and young adult space specifically?
So I'm originally from Los Angeles, and growing up, I was extremely involved in my home congregation. I served as a madricha. I helped run our Tot Shabbat program. I loved being at my synagogue. And we always had these really cool interns and teachers, and I knew that I wanted to be like them. So when I went to college, I sought out Jewish community, and I decided to work at Mount Zion super part-time in their religious school and doing youth programming. And as I continued on my McAllister journey, I took on more and more things. COVID happened. We switched to remote. That was a really great opportunity to take on even more at Mount Zion and to do more engagement with kids who are now at home, only connecting via Zoom. So I took on more my senior year of college, and then they brought me on full time when I graduated, doing youth and young adult engagement work. And I love the kids. I love the families. And what really draws me to the synagogue space is that it's an intergenerational community, and it's completely wrapped into all the life cycle moments. So the families that we work with, yes, I work with them, the 7th graders for Hebrew school, and I do youth groups and all the fun kid activities. And we're also the place that families come when they are experiencing loss in their family or for other life cycle moments. And so to have those connections beyond just I'm writing text on a whiteboard, what does this mean? I really love that. And to have those types of connections and the whole intergenerational part of the community, there's always so much going on in the building. And I love that to get to their classrooms, the kids have to walk past all these different groups of people, these older adults who are engaging in different ways in the community. I think that that's so cool and really creates a space where people can find their group and thrive.
And I think that's fun because you get to, the kids get to see the adults and the adults get to see the kids. And there is that interactivity, even if they're not like talking to each other, it gives everybody a sense of sort of the full scope of what goes on.
Exactly. And like I can see myself one day doing X, Y, and Z. That's very exciting. And in different spaces with kids, that's not always a thing.
Right, for sure. What was it that brought you from California to McAllister? Because obviously plenty of schools, small schools, big schools, you name it in California. McAllister is a long, long way from California. What was the draw?
I loved the campus. I loved the school. I was looking at all the small liberal arts schools.
Okay.
And I ultimately decided that I wanted to be in a big city and I wanted to be somewhere in the Midwest, not quite as far from home as the East Coast. And when I visited campus, I loved it. And it was a great decision for me.
What was I guess, how do you find McAllister if you're, from California? Like again, lots of cities, lots of schools in between here and there. I mean, what was it about the Midwest, I guess, is really the question. And I asked that question as somebody who's a lifelong Midwesterner.
Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles, lived there my whole life, and I wanted something different. And I think that's part of what was appealing about the Midwest. I'd spent a little bit of time in Minnesota before I happened to go to the Concordia language villages for French camp one summer. And I loved it. The people were so nice. I loved going to Mall of America and driving all around the North Shore. And I feel like even then, from a younger age, I could picture myself living here and being just in a bit of a slower paced community. And yeah.
No, that's great. That's fantastic. So working with youth and teens, what is obviously you had that sort of connection growing up in your home congregation, but what is it about specifically that age group? And then and also how have you seen that the need for that type of position evolve in your time there?
Yeah, I think for that age group specifically, there's so much curiosity and so much growth, even just that happens within the scope of a year. I teach the seventh grade class at Mount Zion, so that's the grade that I feel the most connected to, both in terms of like age and stage and the content itself.
Hmm.
And that's also the B'nai Mitzvah year when most of our kids go through the B'nai Mitzvah process and they celebrate as a grade together. And so it's a really special time where they come into the year fresh off of many years of Hebrew school and learning the prayers and learning the tunes and learning more of the hard skills for leading a service, becoming B'nai Mitzvah in our community. And then in seventh grade, there's this transition to more of a values-based curriculum, more of a how can we apply all of these amazing stories and teachings and traditions and values that we've been learning into our lives in 2024. And that's a lot of what our teen programming is about. That what does it mean for me to be Jewish today? And what does it mean for me to be engaged in Jewish community? And so to be able to guide the teens through that feels really special, and it feels really fulfilling to get to be with them on that journey, both in like the more formal sense of seventh grade class and coming to youth group events and leading a retreat for them and all those types of things, and the more informal when they're around synagogue because they're expected to come to Shabbat services and I get to chat with them at Oneg and connecting with their families. There's so many connection points and ways of drawing people in and figuring out what different people's ins are, that is really cool to me.
I know a lot of synagogues. I know I've heard it a lot over the years, both in the position I'm in now at JUfolk and also just going to synagogue. There a lot of angst and hand wringing about youth and young adult engagement and how do you bring this age group in and keep them, you know, keep them connected, but also like I think even before keeping them connected, like how do you forge that connection? What is something specifically maybe that you're doing or you're wanting to try in that regard? Because obviously that is a big challenge with teens. I think so much more is expected of them now than probably even when you were, I mean, certainly when I was that age, but probably even from when you were that age.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that they're so busy, they're so overbooked, and so figuring out just the like literal time for them to come to our building can be a challenge. And that's something that I'm thinking a lot about, and I don't have the answers for. I think that one piece though of it is accountability. So not only why do I want to come here? I want to have fun and be with my friends, but what is it that I'm expected to give to my community that my community relies on me for? And I think that
Right.
if we can build that up within our teens, we'll have more people coming and returning and trying to pass on that leadership to younger students. I see that in our seventh grade program. We have Gesher mentors who are 11th and 12th graders who co-teach our seventh grade class with me. And the seventh graders want to be like them. And they feel that the 11th and 12th graders feel this sense of responsibility because they know that seventh graders aren't good at hiding things, which is great because they show these 11th and 12th graders that they love them and respect them and want to spend time with them. And so when you have the 11th, 12th graders who are like, do I come today? I have a lot of homework. My band has a rehearsal. They're like, the seventh graders actually want me there. And that's really compelling to come. That's way more compelling than me being like, come to this event. So I think that level of accountability is really helpful. I also think that having the programming that the kids want is a great way to go.
Right.
Um, I can think about some incredible program. Our team can think about something amazing that sounds great and super appealing. And if the teens are like, no, that doesn't sound fun, then we haven't gotten anywhere. We have to get them in the door. And so that also though goes back to the whole idea of leadership and accountability. And if you're planning your own event, it's going to be something that you want to go to. If I'm planning it, 50-50.
Right. No, I mean that's the best way to get buy-in from the teens you're programming for is to have is to get them engaged in the planning and the discussion, and I think having the older teens, the 11th 12th graders help with that helps create, I mean, wary about using the words cool factor about synagogue events, but like not uncool factor. How about that? I mean, there's you need that balance. Also, if you had the answer to that conundrum, you could make a whole lot of money as a consultant, because I think that's the silver bullet, right? The next generation that not just synagogues but Jewish organizations are trying to reach is the age group you're working with. That is always going to be the next thing that they're worried about. So, okay, so you recently graduated. You have a master's degree. Is it master's degree in Jewish nonprofit management? Is that what
Exactly.
it is? And you were the student speaker at your graduation,
I
which I
was.
watched the video. It was a really wonderful speech. When you got asked what, like, I like doing this stuff. I like talking to people. I like this podcast. I like all of that. And the idea of speaking in front of a large group of people, though, mildly terrifies me. You seemed incredibly poised. How was that for you?
It was such an interesting experience. To be completely honest, I don't think that I fully comprehended the amount of people and like the caliber of people who are going to be in that space. I volunteered to do it when they had asked. They said, "We need a student speaker who's interested." I said, "I'm interested." I gave a proposal. They chose me. And I was super excited. And I didn't quite think about that, like all of these super high up people from the college would be there. And I'm really glad that I didn't think about that because I like was looking up on the stage at all these people and I was like, whoa, this is quite the group that I'm speaking to. Um, but I also think that the adrenaline of that moment, right, kind of carried me through. Um, and looking out at my classmates was great. Looking out at my family, I like could see my mom kind of getting a little weepy out there, which like that felt really good to have the support of my whole community there. But it was really special to get to share that with the college.
How did you come up with the theme? Because I thought it was a really interesting speech, and we'll link to the text of it in the show notes. But what was it about the topic that you wrote the proposal for that you and then fleshed out into a speech?
Yeah, so I spoke about polarity. So, this idea that there's these tensions in our lives that really rely on each other so that we can experience life fully. So, the idea of brokenness and wholeness. We can't experience brokenness if we don't know what wholeness is. We can't experience wholeness if we don't know what brokenness is. Um, and I came up with it. I spent a lot of hours sitting in a coffee shop, really just trying to think about what I wanted to hear. This has been a crazy year on so many levels. So changed by October 7th. Being in a Jewish institution, that was on all of our minds. My classmates are all working as Jewish professionals out in the world at various institutions, at Hillels, at different organizations. And so we were all able to support each other, which was really special. And we were all holding so much as we were navigating this new world in our workplaces and in our personal lives. And so I was really just trying to think about what I wanted to hear in this moment that's so joyful. It's culminating this 2 year experience. We went through so much together in a positive way. We traveled to Israel together pre October 7th. We spent time in person together in LA for a summer intensive. We spent so much time together on Zoom, and we all really became friends throughout this process. And for the other programs as well that graduated, the same idea that people became so close and had this amazing community of learning. And we were dealing with so much craziness in our world. And a lot of my classmates, myself included, dealt with loss during this time. There was a lot of death that happened
Mm.
within our cohort among our families, which was also really challenging. And so I was thinking about what I personally wanted to hear, and that's how I came up with the speech.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the obviously the time that we're living in as Jewish professionals, I think, has been incredibly challenging. I think we would all acknowledge that over the last 9 months, right? It's been incredibly difficult, but I think interesting that you talk about this cohort of graduates that you were going through the program with. It's interesting that you're all doing these full-time jobs. You tend to think of being a student as being a student and being on campus, but this particular program gives you the opportunity to be a working professional while also working towards this degree. And so you are all kind of spread out that way. That feels really unusual.
It was, and it was really cool in so many regards because we were all around the country. And as we well know, Midwestern Judaism looks very different than West Coast Judaism, which looks different than Southern Judaism. So it was really cool to get to have all of these experiences in one space. And so much of our classes was using real life examples. So it was great to have all these different stories and all these different experiences that were kind of similar to what we were doing and kind of different because we were in different places and different types of organizations working with different populations. And we were able to be in person a couple times, which was really special to get to connect more on that level.
That's nice. It's nice that you were able to be together some, that it wasn't a fully virtual program, and that you got to travel to Israel together. I think there's a lot of sort of good feelings that can be taken from that, of being together in that space that you might not have had otherwise.
For sure. And we got to visit all these different nonprofits when we were in Israel, which was so cool, both to be together and to be in this space and learning and seeing these historic sites and learning about Israel's social sectors that we don't necessarily focus on being here. And so
Oh,
learning
sure.
about how their nonprofit spaces work and learning about different really cool organizations that serve different communities that, again, aren't always our focus when we, especially when we're trying to boil it down for religious school students, but even in our broader communities, the focus isn't always on women in tech or like Ethiopian Jews in
Mm.
tech. Like there were all these different subsections of society that are doing really cool things and organizations that are doing really cool things. And we got to learn about how fundraising works there, which is extremely different than how it works here. So it
Oh,
was a really
really?
cool experience.
How
Yeah.
so?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I have notes somewhere.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. Are there programs or things that you could take away from not just visiting Israel, but from other people that you graduated with, that like do you use that sort of opportunity in the relationships you've built now to sort of bounce ideas off each other, of ways to sort of do something new and different?
Yeah, absolutely. I connected so much. There were only 8 of us in my cohort,
Oh, wow.
which is a really tiny group, which
Yeah.
meant that we got really, really close from spending so much time together. And so, yeah, they were my primary idea bouncers for those 2 years, and we're still constantly in touch with each other to talk about ideas, to give life updates. So it's a really nice network, and there's a great alumni network from the program. There's alums everywhere, so that's really cool
Yes.
to have so many people that I can connect with.
That's great. When did you know that this was the type of graduate program you wanted to go into? Because obviously working in sort of the teen young adult engagement space, obviously there's lots of different, I mean, it could be sort of more of a Jewish educator role, or there, it feels like there's several different paths you could have taken. What was appealing about this particular uh program that you ended up going through?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that my primary interest is engagement.
Okay.
I love the education side of it. I'm super involved in the religious school as part of my role because we have the exact same crowd that we're dealing with, which is
Sure.
great. And I love multiple aspects of synagogue life and the engagement side of it. Getting people in the door to events is what I'm really excited about. And there are so many skills within that I didn't yet have. And so like I started to build them working at Mount Zion during college, and I was building them in that first year of working full time. And I was realizing that there's so much that I didn't yet have. And so this essentially fast tracked me to acquire some of those skills for talking to different people, to running different aspects of synagogue life that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
That's really cool. And one of the things that I believe I was told, I don't remember, and because of the last, everything since October 7th is sort of a blur, but I believe one of sort of the teen engagement folks in the community said this was your idea, was sort of this, it was the teen Jewish teen summit. that happened. I think it was before October 7th that this happened, right? Where like all of the like youth groups from different synagogues came together for an event at the JCC in St. Louis Park. Was that in fact your idea?
Yeah, so we did it in, I want to say November of 2022.
Oh, that was a
Um,
lot longer ago than I
it was,
realized.
it was a little while ago, but that's okay. Yeah, so that was an interdenominational community-wide teen event. And so it was still, we're coming back from COVID and really figuring out what makes sense for teens, how teens are going to connect. And there's this really nice network of youth professionals in the Twin Cities. And so I figured both for us to connect and for all of our teens to connect, that can only be good. And so we had this event, the teens helped lead it, different teens from different synagogues had icebreakers that they were leading, had activities that they owned. And we had like 40 teens from within the community come. And it was a really nice event to, again, get people to see each other and recognize that there's more than just the Mount Zion teens that they see every Wednesday.
That's great. I mean, and I think that's really, I mean, I heard it was an awesome event, so I'm glad that uh I'm glad that the I know you're focused on Mount Zion. That is your primary focus, and everybody's, your fellow professionals, their focus is going to be their synagogue, but I'm glad that there is sort of these comings together, and hopefully there'll be more of them, because I do think that there's, something, I think there's something to be said about sort of getting the teens outside of the walls of their own synagogue and connecting them with other Jewish teens in the community, because there's just doesn't seem there's a lot of Jewish teens in the community, and there's, I don't think, enough of trying to bridge denominations and the synagogue's own walls to try to connect them in some way.
Right, and that's something that I think a lot about, especially coming from LA, where there's Jews everywhere, and you can drive down the street and there's Hebrew text, and you're like, oh, that's a Judaica shop, or oh, that's a synagogue. That's not a thing here.
Right.
And so I think, especially as Reform Jews, it can feel really isolating to not have that. And of course, what you don't know. And to be
Right.
able to see that there's more to it, and there's more people, and there's more ways of practicing Judaism that can only help as our teens are becoming young adults and going off into the world and experiencing Judaism. I think that that's a positive.
Oh, absolutely. What is the next sort of, I know the summer is probably sort of a planning time for you, where things maybe are a little bit slower for you, but what do you envision as like the next kind of big thing, at least, that you're planning for, if you can say at this point?
Yeah, we have so many retreats for our teens in the fall, and so that's a big part of my planning right now. We have some that are to get our kids connected. I do a seventh grade Shabbaton in the fall to get the seventh graders interacting and getting to know their Gesher mentors that I mentioned earlier. We're planning our New York trip for our 11th graders. We have an 8th and ninth grade Shabbaton. So there's a lot going on that summer is really the planning time for.
That's awesome. Well, that is fantastic stuff. Last couple questions, and we will let you get back to that planning. First, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Simchat Torah.
That is an answer I don't get a lot, which is very cool. Why is that?
Um, I love the cyclical nature of Judaism. That's one of the things that really draws me
Mm.
to it is that the same holidays happen every year, the same traditions happen every day or week or year, depending on what tradition you're talking about. And I think that Simchat Torah is like the physical manifestation of that, where we're reading the end of the Torah and the beginning of Torah, starting all over again. We don't get bored with the same stories because there's so much in there. I think that there's a lot that we can learn from that holiday, and it's all about joy. I mean, who doesn't love a little dancing?
That's true. Good old fashioned dance party. What is your favorite Jewish food?
Babka.
Uh, Anyone's in particular?
I make a really good one.
Okay, awesome. Well, that listen, that works. Absolutely. Abby Gore, thank you so much for joining me. This has been great to talk to you, and look forward to seeing what's coming up next at Mount Zion for the teen and young adult community there. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
The Who the Folk podcast is a part of the Jewfolk Podcast Network and a product of Jewfolk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.